Welcome to the Louth Berkeley sponsored conference, Academic Libraries 2.0. I think the day promises to be a really interesting one. And it's interesting because when the announcement came out, a lot of my staff in my department, which is technical services, were interested in being and participating at the conference, but wondered what is Library 2.0. And I was able to give them some, examples of what I knew from my perspective, but there was a lot that I didn't know. And it's obvious from the number of people that are here that everybody else probably shares the same experience as I do and is looking forward to being able to learn a lot more at the end of this day. So before I actually get started introducing the speakers, I'd like to again thank all the volunteers that made this day possible, and especially the folks who Alan listed who were on the planning committee. I think they put in a lot of hard work and effort, and I'd like to give them a round of applause at this point in time. So let me get started with, I'm going to introduce Shel Wagner, who's the Associate Vice Chancellor and Chief Information Officer at UC Berkeley, and he'll start with some opening remarks.
Well, good morning, and on behalf of my colleagues here at UC Berkeley, we welcome you to our campus. We arranged the weather. I know Tom is pretty influential on campus and organized that. I, on the other hand, am not terribly influential and can't make the wireless work better in this building, so I will do my best to acknowledge that we still have a long way to go in technology, and what we all expect when you arrive at a conference is a good example of that. But that doesn't happen by accident. It requires that you understand what people need and you plan for it. So today I just wanted to welcome with you with the thought of 3 Ps, planning, partnership, and privacy. The planning aspect is something that IT has not historically been terribly good at. As the Chief Information Officer for the campus, it's my responsibility to develop a strategic program of investment in technology that will accommodate the many constituencies of Berkeley. And within the library, you have similar challenges. You have to accommodate your many constituencies, and technology is one of the avenues that you do that. We have embarked on a program here of creating a structure by which we think planning can be successful. And the way we've approached that is we started asking questions. We wanted to build a technology strategic plan, and the first thing you recognize when you ask questions about people's needs is that most of our constituencies don't have plans. It's difficult to build an IT plan when you don't know where your constituencies want to go. So it's a little like boxing with fog. You're not likely to make much contact no matter how hard you swing. So what we did was we put some structure to it, and we created a campus technology council with representative of like constituencies. And a like constituency wasn't based on an org chart, and it wasn't based on any reporting lines. It was based on how people use technology. And I'm happy to say that one of the groups represented at that table is the library. We have an associate CIO who's been appointed, Bernie Hurley, here from our campus. And Bernie represents a constituency's need in how the libraries are using technology. And that has brought a fantastic element to the long-term strategic planning for the campus, and something we've really never had before. But it also represents an opportunity to think about technology not just as to what we're going to buy, but how it should be delivered. And that's the services aspect of planning. We need to move as an organization and as a culture from thinking about IT as just enablement by buying something to thinking about how the services might be provided regardless of who is providing them or what is delivering the solution. Today, most of your constituency don't care what happens behind the front page of the search engine. They don't care where the information is stored or how it's managed. We care, and that's our professional obligation to ensure that it's well protected and well managed. And with that in mind, I would really like to encourage all of you to be considering in your planning how you're doing your partnerships on campus. A partnership with the library for us is very, very important. We each bring different expertise to the table, but as we're thinking about going forward together, a lot of what comes out is that we need different things, but we realize that we can leverage each other to accommodate those. So for example, computer labs. The campus has many computer labs. Every year I meet with someone who tells me that the computer lab is passé and should be shut down because all of our students have laptops now. But when you go and you observe a computer lab, you realize that it's remarkably like a library. It really is just a learning space, just like the library is. So when you think about learning spaces, what's the future of learning spaces? Well, we struggle just to get the physical aspects of them right. But fortunately, with partnerships with the library now, and Beth Dupree, who's part of the campus library here, is working with our team to think about using computers and learning spaces in new ways. And we're doing joint partnerships. I think we need to extend that to think about virtual learning spaces and joint partnerships in what a virtual learning space is going to be, because that's where our students are. We had a demonstration of Second Life this week, and it was fascinating for all of the deans to be participating in that discussion, many of whom had never seen Second Life before. But of course, most of them also don't have accounts in Facebook and MySpace and think email is a primary mode of communication, where students recognize that it's only for old people. So the technology pace is moving so fast. If you don't have the plans and you don't have the partnerships, it's going to be very difficult to accomplish meeting in the future the trajectories of where you want to be. When it comes to the last point about privacy, this is something that I call upon you, I implore you to continue to be activists in this realm. The issues around copyright, Patriot Act, subpoenas and letters of settlement that our students receive for using content in certain ways cross the boundaries of what historically have been easily managed legal issues into a very gray area now, where most of the requests we receive and I as CIO have to sign off on are in fact not formal legal requests. They live in a quasi-gray area that letters come from lawyers, but in fact they're not subpoenas. Notices of possible suits require us to retain data forever without ever any action being taken upon by the plaintiff. Our students could very well end up living in fear of accessing any content in the future, whether for appropriate academic purposes or not, if we deploy the technologies as requested by industries to monitor all the packets on the network and to evaluate whether that content is appropriate and is legal for use. This is not the realm of future Orwellian challenge. It is my day-to-day world. It is the world that many librarians are living in. And a partnership between us is one of the ways that we will be able to manage and hopefully not just defend against it, but lead the discussion rather than responding to it. So with that, I want to thank you again for joining us today at Berkeley, and I'd like to welcome up to the podium my colleague and good friend Tom Leonard, the librarian for the University of California at Berkeley. Thank you.
Good morning. I'm standing in the way of a distinguished plenary speaker about to deliver a keynote. And all Shell really has left me the need to do is to say, amen. I think that the relations between our two organizations, Campus IT and the library, have never been warmer and never more productive. Perhaps the only ironic divide is that we inherited the down-market, non-view offices that they abandoned in Evans Hall. But fortunately, that'll have a happy ending when we move back to our home. But Shell and I have literally looked out some of the same windows, looking at some of the same problems over the last few years. This is a time of great activity on this campus about discussing library matters. Last week seems like a long time ago. We called it then Hell Week because we had 5 conferences going on here centered around the opening of the Star East Asian Library. I think actually this week is true Hell Week because we've had a conference on the university as publisher. Many of you were able to hear a person you'll hear later today, Jim Neal from Columbia, speaking in the library yesterday afternoon about the challenges we face as an institution. And then we have Wonderful Friday, which I'm going to catch as much as I can. I think it actually does say something about Berkeley. that such a wide part of our community is drawn to the issues that librarians really care about, and not at all narrow library issues. If we needed a reminder of the national recognition of the things that librarians care about, it is, I think, in the new New Yorker, and Jim Neal referred to this yesterday in his talk. It's the piece by Anthony Grafton, the distinguished Princeton University historian, that visits the Google landscape and visits the old libraries, and he tries to come to terms with how the world has changed. And it is a somewhat uplifting picture. I have to spell this out because in Berkeley, the New Yorker arrives rather late. I saw mine yesterday afternoon. So it's the one that doesn't have the pumpkin on it. It's well worth reading. And I'll just close with a nugget from his analysis, perhaps especially apt here as we welcome you to the Hayward Fault. The real challenge now is how to chart the tectonic plates of information that are crashing into one another, and then to learn to navigate the new landscapes that are creating. I think that's our business today. Welcome.
So I'd like to introduce our keynote speaker, Meredith Farkas. She's fresh from the Internet Librarian Conference in Monterey, so I'm sure she has a lot to share from that perspective. She describes herself as a librarian, writer, and tech geek, reflecting on the profession and the tools we use to serve our patrons. She is the distance learning librarian at Norwich University, Northfield, Vermont, where she gets to do a little bit of everything. She's the author of Social Software in Libraries, Building Collaboration, Communication, and Community Online. She's also a columnist for the American Libraries, writing a column called Technology in Practice that focuses on successful uses of technology by libraries that would be easy to replicate. One of her passions is providing affordable continuing education for librarians and developed the free online course, 5 Weeks to a Social Library, teaching librarians about social software and how to use it in their libraries. To some, she is known as the queen of wikis. She's created a few, and for example, ALA and other conference wikis. In March of 2006, she was named a Library Journal mover and shaker for her innovative use of technology to benefit the profession. Welcome, Meredith Farkas.
Wow, that's a really long bio for someone who's only been in the profession 3 years. I guess a testament to the wonders of Web 2.0 and that anyone with ideas, can really put them out there these days. And if people like them, then you get a book deal. It's great. So I figured, it would be great to kind of start with a definition of what Library 2.0 is. And this is something I have struggled a lot with myself. I really think a lot of people have looked at have come up with all these different definitions. You ask 5 people and you're going to get 5 very different views of what Library 2.0 is. Is it all about technology? Is it a service philosophy? Is it a management philosophy? I think really to get started, I think we should go back to what Web 2.0 is and really what Web 1.0 is, because I don't think we can understand the second version until we understand the first one. So I really see Web 1.0 as democratized access to information. I remember my mom and I are both very stubborn people, and we used to have these bets about, I think this actor was in this movie, and she'd say, no, he was in this movie. And before the mid-90s, we would have to ride our bikes down to the public library and find the answer there. But all of a sudden, we could just go to the Internet Movie Database and get that information within seconds. All of a sudden, all of this reference information, all of this great stuff was just at our fingertips. And it didn't matter where in the world you lived. As long as you had an internet connection, you were as connected to information as someone, in this area, which has always been very wired. But the problem was that most people were just interacting with the web as consumers. We were just getting information. You know, some people were obviously interacting in forums and like Usenet news groups, but they were usually like the serious fans. Like I'm a Bruce Springsteen fan, and you know, I remember like lurking on a Bruce Springsteen fan news group, you know, in the mid-90s, and just being completely overwhelmed by it. You know, like I was like, oh, I'm not a big enough fan to, you know, take part in this. So I think it was really for the very serious users who were adding information to the web. And also, you had to have server space, and you had to know HTML, or at least have one of those WYSIWYG editors, which at the time were not so terrific. So most of us, you know, were just consumers of information. And I really see Web 2.0 as being a sea change in that now we are all participants in the development of the web. I mean, so much so that Time named us the Person of the Year, because we have created this amazing knowledge base that is the web, that reflects not only the biggest Bruce Springsteen fans, but also, you know, the little ones like me. You know, with now basically anyone can contribute. If you can type words into a box, you can contribute to the development of the web, and I just think that's really incredible. So, Library 2.0. The problem I really have with this term is I still can't get a fix on what Library 1.0 was. This is a chart that my friend created where he sees 1.0 as we're starting at the traditional library. But what does that mean? You know, he's kind of saying here, oh, well, we didn't have trust communities. We didn't change. We weren't engaging with the community before this. And I guess I don't buy that. I mean, I haven't been in the profession for that long. Just for a show of hands, how many people have been in the profession 20 years or more? Okay, leave your hands up, and leave your hands up if in that time people were not innovating or, you know, creating new technologies, responding to user needs, etc. Anybody still? So just a few people. So I think that's the interesting thing, is that there is no real Library 1.0. I think this is really an evolution. We're moving towards being better, but I don't think we were ever terrible. There have always been people who are against change, and there have always been people who've been, you know, very supportive of change. I went to a keynote at Internet Librarian, and Joe Janes, I had to add this slide afterwards, Joe Janes made the comment to the young librarians in the room, you know, we weren't sitting in the hallway trying to make fire before you guys came along. And I was just like, oh God, that's so true. And I think that's kind of the hubris of some of the Library 2.0 fans, is that, you know, none of this was going on before, and I just personally don't buy into that. So I really see this as an evolution, and what's really, in my opinion, made this possible is the technologies that are available now. I mean, blogs have made it so easy to communicate in a less formal way with our constituents. Wikis have made it so much easier for us to collect knowledge from diverse groups of people to create these amazing knowledge bases. But before that, there really wasn't anything that allowed us to do that stuff. So, you know, I think technology is really driving Library 2.0, but really it isn't just about technology. The other thing that I think is driving us forward is that we're just not the only game in town anymore. You know, it's just so easy for people to get information via Google, via the Wikipedia, that they don't really have to go and visit the library. And I mean, I was looking at the new OCLC report that just came out on social networking, and they said that use of almost every like social networking site has gone up, except for the library website, and use of the catalog has gone down significantly. So this is telling me that we really need to look to these Web 2.0 tools to figure out what makes them tick, what makes them so appealing and attractive to our users, and how can we either put our content there or make our content like what they like about social software. I really see academic Library 2.0 as a state of mind. It's really just a way of looking at what we should be doing as librarians. It's about meeting changing user needs, constantly reevaluating our services in light of the fact that our population is constantly changing. It's about radical trust, and this is a term that's thrown around a lot in the Library 2.0 literature. We really do need to have faith in our users. When we open up comments, we're taking a huge risk because we don't know if they're going to say good things or bad. And if they do say bad things, we can learn from it. But we have to trust our users as partners in developing the future of our libraries. We need to get rid of the culture of perfect, and I think this is a really hard one in libraries because I think we often suffer from analysis paralysis, where we try to create not just the blog, but the perfect blog. We have to get just the right software with just the right extensions and just the right theme and have just the right posts. But we don't think about the fact that maybe nobody even wants a blog, and maybe we should kind of start out simple and then see where things go. But it's a constant iterative process with all of our technologies. We can't expect to put something out there and just have it be in this done state where we never have to fix it again. We need to constantly keep up with new technologies and opportunities that are out there. Not a week goes by that I don't find something really exciting, a new technology or a new application of technology that I could be using at my library. So it's really important that we all keep up with what's going on out there. And I don't remember who told me this, but some wonderful librarian said that librarians don't extrapolate. And I think this is so true in that people often only look at examples from their own library type. We look at, what other academic libraries are doing, when public libraries are doing neat stuff we could be capitalizing on, school libraries, corporate libraries, also outside of libraries, nonprofits, museums, corporations. There's so much going on in other sectors that we could be learning from. So it's important that we really, look far and wide at the examples out there for inspiration. First, I'm going to look at kind of what I see as Academic Library 2.0 in how we deal with our patrons. And the first thing that I think is critical is that we need to know our users, because I don't think we can create good services if we don't actually know what they want. I think a lot of libraries, a lot of librarians read these EDUCAUSE articles about the NetGen student, and then we think that we know our students. I know at my school, my students don't fit the NetGen stereotype to a T. There are certain things that they're more into than people at other schools are, and there are certain things that they're not. Like mobile devices are not a big thing at Norwich. Well, I'm sure in the Bay Area it's huge. It just depends on your population, and that's why it's critical to survey your own users and see what it is that they're into. And not just by doing LibQual. I mean, I think LibQual is great. We've learned a lot of good things about it, but when you do a survey like that, you're asking people what they think of the things that you value. You're not asking them, what do you value? What is important to you? How do you do research? And I think one school that did a great job with that is the University of Rochester. They hired an anthropologist to actually do ethnographic research of their students. So they looked at how they actually go through the research process. And one really interesting thing they found out that kind of blew my mind was that students often call their parents. That's often the first thing that they do when they get a research assignment. And I mean, clearly a lot has changed since I was in college, because I didn't do that. But then they figured out, well, gosh, maybe instead of just marketing to the students, we need to get to the parents. So they have an orientation breakfast for parents at the library every year now. So guess what? When these students have an assignment, they can say, oh, you should go to the library. They have that great JSTOR there, and you should give that a try. Even if they don't know what JSTOR is, that's, just having that word of mouth marketing from their mom and dad is a great idea. But there are so many places where we could be getting feedback. This is the profile of Oceana Wilson. It's her Facebook profile. She's the director of the Bennington College Library in Vermont. And she has used her Facebook profile to ask students what they would like the library to purchase. And I know we all have our little acquisitions form where people can request books, but how many students actually think that that's for them? they probably, think, oh, that's for faculty to make requests, not for me. And all the while, we're thinking, gosh, we wish we could get more feedback from students as to what they want in our collection. So she's gone into Facebook and has said, in their space, and has said, what do you want us to purchase? And I've been following her profile for the past year and a half, and this is just a few weeks, I think, worth of requests that people have made in this space. They've said, oh, I'm working on my thesis, and this would be a great resource. And she lets them know that she's purchased it for the collection and tells them when it's come in. I just think it's so valuable to go into their space and ask for feedback. So this is another really neat way of learning more about our students. We need to start questioning everything. There are so many things that we just see as truths in our profession. This is just how things are done. And some days I sit at the reference desk for 3 hours and don't have a single patron come to the desk while I get maybe 10 or more IMs, and I just ask myself, maybe this isn't the way that we should be doing it, because obviously we're not really meeting user needs if we're sitting at a desk that they don't come to. So I really believe that we need to start questioning everything that we do, and I think that's incredibly scary. I know I went to a talk last year by some folks at the Darien Public Library in Connecticut, where they talked about the new library that they're building and how they're kind of going to revolutionize everything they do. They're going to outsource technical services, and the book ordering process from ordering to being on the shelf is going to take only 18 hours. And we were all just, so many of us were sitting there saying, oh, sure. Yeah, right, as if any of this is going to happen. And then I realized this is like a reaction almost out of fear. Like the thought that we could be doing it in a way that isn't the best way is kind of scary. Because, why aren't we questioning this? So I really believe in questioning everything. I mean, the idea of a learning commons, the idea of a combined services desk was crazy a long time ago. But now we've realized that students don't know the difference between the writing center and IT and us. If they're giving us these questions at the reference desk, maybe we should have people there who are capable of answering them. Another place is, the way that we are classifying our materials. The Maricopa County Public Library got rid of the Dewey system for putting for displaying books, and now they're using the classification system that bookstores use. Maybe it'll work, maybe it won't, but it's good that somebody is trying this out and figuring it out for us. I mean, this is critical that we really start questioning all of the things that we believe to be true. We need to communicate better with our patrons. I think blogs have really given us the ability to communicate in a more informal way with our patrons, and also to get feedback through the comments. This is the Ohio University Library Business blog, and this is the business librarian, Chad Boninger. He has actually, he has a great relationship with the business department, and he has this blog where he basically provides reference services at the point of need, where when he finds out about an assignment coming up, he can just tell the students, instead of waiting for them to come to the desk, he gives them resources and advice that would be useful to their research. So, I know there are for every student that comes to the desk, there are probably 5 more who are too shy to ask a question. So this is an amazing way to really reach out to all of the users, regardless of, their ability to come and ask a question. I remember maybe 2 years ago when the Ann Arbor District Library Director got a blog and started communicating with her patrons. It was such a big deal. And now I think there are dozens of directors, university librarians, et cetera, who are blogging directly with their patrons. And I think that's an amazing thing, because it really tells the patrons that we do care about them and what they think. And as you can see here, the university librarian at McMaster does leave comments open, and people can comment on this blog, which I think is terrific. However, the Virginia Commonwealth University libraries have really taken this feedback to a new level. I think we all probably have a comment and suggestions form at our library, and I know if I were a user, I would probably never fill it out because one, you never know, like, what's going to happen afterwards? Is someone actually going to write back to me? Is this going to make a difference? Is it going to matter? Well, at Virginia Commonwealth University, when someone fills out one of those comments, it gets posted to their blog, and their comment or question is answered by a relevant staff member from the library. So this is such a risk. I mean, this is such a risky thing to do, to actually publish your users' comments. I mean, sometimes we, in my library, we get terrible comments from our users, and we wouldn't want people seeing it. Oh my God. But by putting it up there, you're really putting your money where your mouth is. You're really saying, we are willing to change to meet your needs, or at the very minimum, we are willing to explain why we have the policies we do. And I just think this is an amazing way of connecting with our students and showing them that we care and that we're gutsy enough to really be transparent with them. There are a lot of ways we can use 2.0 tools to highlight our collections. Another thing that I think libraries are very bad at is marketing. I wish I had taken a course in library school on marketing, because I think sometimes we could all use an MBA, before we go into the profession, to really get the word out about all the great things that we have available. But there are some really neat tools that we can use to highlight our collections, like Flickr. North Carolina State University has put their historical collections on Flickr. And, somebody may stumble upon these photos who never would think of going to North Carolina State University's Special Collections Department and looking up photos, because they've added them to all these different pools. So people who are browsing through a collection of photographs at Life at NCSU could stumble upon these photos and get a whole lot out of them. And they also leave comments open. So this person here actually asked a question about the photograph, and the Special Collections librarians realized that they had misidentified this photograph. So by allowing people to comment on your Special Collections materials, you could have people adding all this additional context and useful information to your materials that makes them so much richer and better for it. RSS allows users to get the content on their own terms, basically. You can subscribe to an RSS feed and get it via email, via a homepage like My Yahoo, via text messaging even. And by that token, it is a great way to really push our content out to our users. The University of Alberta Libraries has made their new books collections, a list of new books, available via RSS feed by subject. So if I was a psychology graduate student and I was interested in knowing the new books that have come out on that topic, I could just subscribe to the RSS feed, and as soon as new content came in, as soon as new books were cataloged, I would hear about it. So this is a great way to make it so that people don't have to constantly remember to visit our website to get our content. No matter what we say about the Wikipedia, people are still going to use it. They may not cite it in their papers, but it's still going to be a tool that people use to get background information on topics of interest. And frankly, I think some of the some of the resources at the end of these articles are very useful. I've linked to some high quality collections, that were linked in the Wikipedia entry. So I think this is a very valuable tool, even if it's not something that our students should necessarily be citing. The University of Washington Library has actually put links in relevant Wikipedia articles to their special collections materials. So this is from a Wikipedia article on the Tacoma Narrows Bridge collapse, and people can just right in that article, they can find the University of Washington Library's digital collections. And maybe if they were doing research, it would never have occurred to them to visit the special collections at the University of Washington, because they wouldn't intuitively know that they had these collections. So this is a great way of just making your information just that much more available by putting it where your users are. Similarly, we should be going where our users are. If our users are not visiting our library website, We need to start looking at how we can provide hooks into our web presence or provide portals to library services from within the spaces that our users are in. And that includes Facebook and MySpace. The University of Miami Libraries has a terrific MySpace profile where they really put a lot of information and a lot of links that take people back into relevant portions of the library website. They have a news blog here. They have links to their subject guides, links to the different libraries to find books and articles, to style guides, to all the kinds of things that people are going to want to find when they're doing their research. They even have the MeBoMe widget, and this is a little chat widget that you can stick on any web page where people can immediately start typing in a query and start chatting with you rather than having to get an account with an IM client and everything. So they're really putting so much of their web presence right in this space. I think it's an amazing way to communicate with our users. Similarly, at Norwich, we've put a portal to library services within WebCT for our distance learners. For distance learners, their online courseware is their campus. And if the library isn't in there, it's like asking users to drive, half an hour across town to visit the library. For most people, that's going to be just enough of a barrier to keep them from doing it. So it's really important, I think, to embed our services in the places where our students are. And as you can see here, we are right in WebCT. There's a link right on the front page of every student's classroom that says library access. So we're right there. It's kind of like being the impulse buy section in a store. We're that pack of gum just sitting there. So it's just so easy to just click on library access and get to us. We need to, I think, get over the whole we're the experts thing. There's only so much I know about the subjects in my liaison area. I'm a liaison to 10 different subjects, so it's hard for me to really provide excellent reference services or to know everything in these subjects. I've created a wiki for our military history students and faculty to share knowledge, to share the resources that they've used while they were doing their research, because I saw them doing this already. They were already in their discussion boards, sharing with each other, oh, I used this great archive in North Carolina to find stuff on the Civil War, and here's the person you need to call. And that was wonderful, except as soon as they finish with that class, that information is gone. It's up in the ether. So having a permanent place where our users can collaborate, share knowledge, and we can really participate with them is just a wonderful thing. Similarly, social bookmarking is another way for us to really capitalize on the collective intelligence. This is Penn Tags, and this is a social bookmarking tool for students, faculty, and staff at the University of Pennsylvania. So they can bookmark web pages or things from the catalog, and they can collect those things into projects, which are kind of like annotated bibliographies. So this is the video games and violence bibliography that somebody created while they were doing research for a paper. And what's really amazing about this is that if they've tagged something that's in the catalog, it will actually show up there. This is a regular catalog entry, and it will show this resource has been posted in Penn Tags. It will show the annotation, the tags used, and most importantly, a link to that bibliography. Even if you're a liaison to only one subject area, there's only so granular you can get with your subject bibliographies. So by having the ability to capitalize on the research that other students have already done, you're basically having your patrons do your work for you. That's not a bad thing. We also need to start getting better at partnerships. We complain and we complain and we complain about how bad our OPAC is. And yet, if a bunch of libraries got together, they could create something together that really met their needs. And this is what they did in Georgia with the Pines project. They created an open source integrated library system called Evergreen, which really was designed to meet the needs of the public libraries in Georgia. But it's also being used in academic libraries. I know in British Columbia there's a whole bunch of academic libraries that are now going to to be implementing Evergreen. So if we got together, we could do these mass digitization projects without needing Google. We could do so much more. We have so much more power if we come together. But it's really hard because we're always so focused on what's going on in our own individual institutions. Similarly, we need to be collaborating within our universities. This is a wiki created for first-year students at McMaster University Libraries. And I love this idea. I love the idea of having a first-year student wiki, but I think they stopped a little too soon. I think a first-year wiki, libraries could partner with all of these other institutions that share the common goal of wanting freshmen to do well. It's the student life, with athletics, with the counseling center. And we could create this wiki that reflects the knowledge of so many people on campus that would really be useful to our patrons. Because the reality is, I don't think that many of them are going to be looking for a library wiki, but they might stumble upon our information in a wiki that has stuff about intramural football. We can't focus just on technology. I think we get so sucked into the shiny things that we forget that some of the most innovative things we could do, some of the most 2.0 things, are actually don't involve technology at all. We changed our hours for providing reference services in response to the fact that our distance learners mostly had their papers due on Saturday nights. That is incredibly useful to them, much more useful than any blog or wiki could be. We can't abandon our constituents who aren't into technology. There will always be faculty who don't care about this stuff, and there will even be grad students who don't. So we need to think about the technology have-nots. We need to think about doing the things that aren't sexy and shiny, because there is so much we could be doing that doesn't involve technology. Now I'm going to look at what I guess I would call Organization 2.0, what we kind of need to do internally to really reach Library 2.0. The first thing is build a learning culture. It's great that professional staff get sent to conferences and stuff, but often so many of our other staff members, paraprofessionals and whatnot, do not have professional development money. I know at my library, there's a few of us who get to go to conferences, and the rest of the people have to just make do with the skills that they came in with, and I think that's a real shame. I think we need to look more at doing, really in-house continuing education programs like Learning 2.0. This is a project created by the Public Library of Charlotte and Mecklenburg County, where it consists of 23 things. There are discovery exercises that everyone did that kind of got them using technology, playing with a blog, playing with a wiki, because I think it's that hands-on experience that really gets people comfortable with the technologies. And while this program was initially designed for public libraries, it's been implemented more than 200 times by libraries in academic libraries, special libraries, public libraries, all around the world. And it's really an amazing staff development program to get people comfortable with technology. We need to develop a risk-tolerant culture, and this goes back to that whole culture of perfect thing. All of our technologies should be in perpetual beta, and I don't mean by that we put technologies out there that are going to break, but this should always be an iterative process. We should always put something out there, evaluate it, see what our users like and don't like, and then make changes accordingly. If we think that we're going to do a web redesign, and as soon as we put it out there, we're just going to be done, we're kidding ourselves. No matter how much usability testing you do, there's always going to be something that people will not like about it. And we have to be willing to make changes and to realize that spending too much time creating a perfect product might make us create something that doesn't really work for anybody. We need to get better at collecting knowledge internally. There are so many people in any library who are the only person who can do things. If I was hit by a bus today, no one would know how to run the server at our library, and that's really scary. We need to get better at collecting knowledge. Just imagine if there was a wiki that collected knowledge from every reference librarian in the library. We all have different areas of expertise. You know, my friend is an architecture librarian, and I'm constantly banging on her door every time a student comes with an architecture question. But what if I could just access that on a wiki? It would be like having all of your colleagues standing with you at the reference desk every time you have a question. We also need to capitalize on our network. I used to feel really bad about leaving instant messaging open while I was at work, but I realized that there were so many things that I was using it for that benefited me in my work. You know, I would ask a friend about you know, what they were doing for subject guides at their library. I would, you know, chat with somebody about wikis and how to get RSS feeds to display in MediaWiki. And I realized this really, while I'm having a good time talking about it, this is work. This is work, and we all know people in the profession where we could be capitalizing on what they know. You know, this girl is an expert in wikis. This guy knows a lot about screencasting, and, well, Stephen Abram kind of knows everything. So there's, you know, there's so much we could be capitalizing on this network. I really see Facebook almost as an online Rolodex where I can just say, oh, there's that person who knows a lot about this, and I can go bug them about it. We need to be more transparent, not just with our patrons, but also internally. And I think this is hard. When libraries are doing, you know, major reorganizations, there's always a lot of anxiety. At McMaster, I keep picking on McMaster, but they're a really great example. About 2 years ago, they had a new university librarian who came in and completely redesigned their library, basically, the organizational scheme. They completely changed the functional units, got rid of copy cataloging, gave some people early retirement. And this obviously was very scary for a lot of people, but they were very transparent about it. They had a blog where they constantly were talking about the process. They were publishing all of the meetings minutes, all of the committee reports, so that everyone could be aware of what was going on and not be, you know, so freaked out. Because I think, you know, sometimes we think it's a good idea to be secretive about things like this, that it won't, you know, will keep people from panicking, whatever. We'll wait till we actually have a decision. But during that time, the people who don't know what's going on are getting lower and lower morale and are getting more and more fed up with the institution usually. We also need to recognize that good ideas can come from anywhere and anyone. It doesn't matter if it is a student worker or, you know, an associate university librarian. Everyone has something useful to bring to the table from their unique perspective, and we need to have mechanisms for really getting feedback from all of the people in the library, because so often we're only listening, you know, to the really tech-savvy people or to the administrative people, when the frontline staff have so much that they could offer. One thing, I actually added this slide while I was at Internet Librarian, because one thing I kept hearing over and over again from so many people there who have been named movers and shakers is that they feel like they're not supported by their institutions. And that is an awful thing, because these people, so many of them, I know somebody who was named a mover and shaker who was at Georgia Tech, who just left to work for a for-profit company because he wasn't being appreciated, and they appreciated him. I mean, we need to find ways to, you know, make people feel good about the work they're doing. We need to recognize all of the contributions that people are making, and not make people who are doing amazing things feel like they maybe stick out like a sore thumb. This is really critical, because we're going to lose all of our good people if we don't find ways of making them feel excited about the work they're doing and appreciated. We need to be agile. Like I said, you're not going to put out a web redesign and not have to change it later on when you start getting feedback. We need to be able to quickly change in response to new technologies, changing needs, et cetera. And I think a lot of organizations are not set up for that. We have long committee processes where we have to talk about, you know, for 3 months about which blog software we're going to use and this and that. And I think it's important that, you know, there is consensus this, but we also need to enable people to make decisions. We need to empower our staff to be able to, make some decisions on their own, because if we don't, we're not going to be able to make, we're going to be the water buffalo, not the cheetah. All staff needs to be involved in decision making. I mean, I do believe strongly in having an emerging technology committee that comes up with the great ideas. But when you're actually planning for a new technology, it's important to get all stakeholders involved. First of all, it's going to give you more buy-in, because if people aren't consulted and they're just told, oh, you're going to be doing podcasting now or something like that, they're going to feel like it's been dumped on them. In addition to getting buy-in, though, sometimes when you work with the technology all the time, you can kind of get tunnel vision, where you don't see all of the flaws that somebody coming to it new and fresh would see. So it's great to have all stakeholders there with fresh eyes on the project so that they can bring things up that you never thought about. This is the one I have the most trouble with. I went to a talk a few years ago where this one library was talking about how they developed a staff wiki. And basically their decision-making process was, wikis are cool, we should totally have one at our library. Yeah, to me that seems a little bit backward. You kind of need to start with the need. What does your library need? Do you need a better way of communicating internally? Okay, what are the tools that will get you there? Maybe it's a blog, maybe it's a wiki. But when you implement something just because it's a shiny new toy, not because you actually need it, the chances are very good that nobody's actually going to use it. I used to be a child and family therapist, and in that profession we talk a lot about resistance and understanding what is at the heart of resistance. And I think a lot of people, when they see staff members resisting new technologies, they just think, oh, they're a Luddite. They just don't want to change. They just want everything to stay the same. And I think we need to look beyond that, to look at what is actually blocking them from doing this. Libraries that have switched from using email as the primary means of communication to blogs and wikis, it takes a long time to make that happen. When you are in the habit of using a specific technology, no matter how tech savvy you are, it is hard to change. It takes, having a bookmark right there in their browser so that they can easily click on the wiki to access it. It takes reminding them consistently, maybe for a while posting their emails to the wiki just so that they can get used to seeing it there. But it takes a lot of time and persistence, and we shouldn't just dismiss our colleagues as being Luddites just because they show some resistance. In addition, not everyone learns by reading documentation. I recently taught a class for info people, and I had someone say, well, I created this staff blog and I sent them the instructions and nobody used it. Well, not everybody learns that way. Some people need that training space. They need to sit with a facilitator and learn in that safe space because they feel like they might break something. Even if they can't break something, it can be overwhelming. I still get lots of emails with people asking me to, add content to the library success wiki, and this is just how some people are. It's their learning style, and we need to, listen to that, listen to what people are telling us, and offer them the training experiences that they need to become comfortable with technology. This is the biggest one. I think a lot of libraries, a lot of library administration are very gung-ho about new technologies and Web 2.0 and everything, but they're not giving their staff time for this. They're just saying, we need to create some blogs and wikis, and this is just in addition to all of your other job duties. And it gives the impression that this isn't important, because you would give people time for reference shifts, for other things. It's critical that that people have time to work with these technologies, to create new things, because otherwise they're just going to resent the fact that someone's asking them to do yet another thing. We also need to make keeping up a part of people's job descriptions. In my job description, it actually says that I keep up with new technologies and tell my colleagues about it. So I feel comfortable sitting at my desk a few hours a week and reading Google Reader and reading the blogs that I subscribe to and keeping up in that way because I know it's part of my job. Other people have to do it, every night, every weekend, and if it's not a part of one's job, then people are not going to feel like it's something that the institution values. And this should be one of the most important things that we value. Some libraries may need to hire, an emerging technologies librarian or a digital services, strategies librarian. There's all these great titles going around now that are so Web 2.0 librarian. But we might need somebody to come in and really provide leadership and focus in this area. But you might already have staff who are really into this stuff, who are kind of just doing it on their own time, who are, doing these fun things that are, in reference or instruction or whatever, or even tech services. And maybe you can just shuffle around your staff a little bit and give them different responsibilities where they're more focused on these technologies, because there are a lot of people out there who would love to be emerging technologies librarians, and they may be in your institution. The question I'm going to leave you with, is your organization as it's currently structured able to make this happen? I see Library 2.0 as kind of a 12-step program, and the first step is knowing you have a problem. We have so many layers in our organization, so much approval processes. We're not agile. We move slowly. We have IT structures that don't really allow for flexibility. They don't let us explore all these great open source options. We need to look at what we need to do to get there. And maybe it requires, a McMaster-like complete reorganization of the library structure. Or maybe it just means that you have a Learning 2.0 program at your library to get everybody up to speed with new technologies. But really think about the things I talked about in this keynote, and think about, can your organization do this? Can they make it happen? And what would need to change to make it happen? My slides are available at meredithfarkas.wetpaint.com, and thanks for having me.
Thank you, Meredith. We have a wireless mic, and I know there are lots of questions that people will have for Meredith, so I'll be passing it around. Any takers?
Come on,
Oh, okay.
You guys are at Berkeley. You got to have opinions here.
You don't want to open that floodgate.
Do you have any recommendations for, thank you. Susan Brennan.
Hi.
Hi. I work with high school students. And my question is regarding some of these sites, such as MySpace and Facebook. There's a lot of controversy about minors using these spaces, and then librarians, if we start to use these spaces as well, what kind of parameters would you recommend putting up, or how would you recommend approaching integrating those types of services?
I really believe that we need to tread lightly in these spaces. I know the Brooklyn College Library has created this profile, and they're actively friending students. Like, they're going into the student spaces and friending them. And I think it's kind of like a librarian going to a pub with students and trying to be cool. It's just, I think it's an invasion of their privacy. But I think hanging up a shingle in that space, maybe doing some marketing. I know at my library to market IM services, we raffled off an iPod to people who used the service. So maybe you could do something like that. But I think it needs to be in a way that's not intrusive. And I think you also need policies for friending, for how to deal with inappropriate comments, because I've seen some public library MySpace sites that have ended up with really inappropriate things in the message area. So I think, I think this is really a sticky subject, and it does require a lot of careful thought and planning before you go in there. Absolutely. Thank you. Sure. Yes. You're going to get some exercise today.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
You were talking a little bit earlier about, the importance of trusting the user in with these social technologies, and just sort of piggybacking on this other woman's comment, I'm interested in hearing how do people manage things like racist, pornographic, we're dealing with lower division undergraduates, and
right.
it's kind of a similar situation. They're not as mature as you'd like them to be, and that kind of stuff is going to show up. So what are some techniques for managing that?
Well, I think trusting your users doesn't necessarily mean keeping things completely open so that they can write whatever they want. I think you need policies to govern what is acceptable use. And I don't think you can say, you can't write anything negative about the library, obviously, but you do need to make clear that, advertisements, off-topic posts, anything that's, slander or racist or, really, use of profanity is not going to be tolerated. And any space you leave open, an open forum, is going to require some type of moderation. If you have a wiki, you're going to have to check the recent changes frequently, because I have seen, was just using a library wiki as an example at a pre-conference the other day and found spam all over it. So no matter when you do leave these spaces open, it does require that moderation. And when you do see something inappropriate, it's good to have a policy that explains what you will and will not tolerate, because then you're not just making arbitrary decisions about what you're going to, delete. Oh.
It's on now. I really appreciate the concept of radical trust. I thought that was a really interesting concept. And I wondered if you've seen not only radical trust in terms of our users, but radical trust in terms of our data. Whether you've seen library APIs letting our users into our data silos, into our cataloging, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, I mean, the Ann Arbor District Library is now allowing people to put tags in the catalog, and I can't even imagine that, a few years ago this would have been thought of as at all acceptable. Oh my God, our users are cataloging our books, what are they going to put in there? But I think with things like Library Thing and all these other tools where we see users tagging things, and for the most part tagging things very appropriately, we're realizing that by letting them add to our closed systems, that they're making our resources more findable. And yeah, I haven't seen, I'm trying to think. I think the main thing I keep, what?
I was thinking higher end of that, like
oh.
APIs, programming to actually get into
Right. Right. I don't think there's too much going on like that I've seen. I mean, I feel like that's been the something that people have been talking about and not doing much with. I mean, it's the same as library mashups. Somebody was asking if somebody would write a book on that, and I said it would be 2 pages long, because there just aren't that many libraries doing anything much with mashups. But yeah, I think there is great promise with these tools, but just like wikis, you don't have a lot of people who have public-facing wikis where patrons can actually edit stuff. So I think we still have a lot of radical mistrust of our users, and maybe, in some ways for good reason. And maybe it's just because we don't have time to moderate it, because we're, that's I think the big thing. We have to know that we're going to have to keep an eye on these things. Any other questions? Oh, yes, down in front.
Interested in knowing how, I mean, I have a Facebook account. How are people going to know about it? I mean, I don't understand how people get connected to library Facebook sites or personal librarian Facebook sites.
To connect to other students or to other librarians?
it doesn't really matter. I mean, how does somebody find out about the existence of the
Of your
such and
Facebook
such?
profile.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. Well, I think if you're marketing to students, just like any service, they're not going to know about anything we offer them because they're not visiting our website for the most part. I think we have to do marketing. I know at the University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign, they do very, very aggressive marketing outside of Facebook, of their Facebook profile. I know at Brooklyn College, they had a contest for people to redesign their MySpace profile. So yeah, they're not just going to stumble upon it, chances are, but you have to do the same kind of marketing you would do for any new service that you're offering. In terms of librarians finding you, usually you have to friend a few people, and then when they see that you're friends with their friends, they'll friend you, and then after a while you have 200 friends and you have no idea who 90% of them are. But you can still sleep on their couch if you go visit them. It's the rule.
Any other questions?
My question is, kind of what do you see as the place of the library to orient new students to really basic resources that the library has, and then maybe work out from there so that they have a basic, let's say, knowledge of how to access something like Google Scholar or JSTOR, and then kind of work maybe from there outward to bring them into a library community. I just found in my experience that working with student assistants that a lot of times they don't even know what's available to them from our library.
Absolutely.
And I have a 19-year-old niece who was doing a research paper and hadn't heard of JSTOR. So I was wondering if what kind of innovative ways to introduce students to those kind of things that you've encountered?
Well, I think definitely using technology to provide instruction is critical. I know at my library we have some of our English 101 classes come in for, library instruction, and we try to make it as interactive and engaging as possible, even though without technology. We have games and things that go on during the session. But for all of those English 101 classes that don't come in, those people are going into their university career at a severe disadvantage because they haven't learned any of this. And I think it's really important to provide instruction maybe through screencasts, which takes a movie of your desktop so you can actually show, typing in a query, what box you click on, what you do to limit it to academic journals only, so that they can actually see you doing searches without necessarily needing to come into the library. I use it a lot with our distance learners, and I find that it's kind of the closest thing to hands-on instruction that you can get without actually being with the students. But yeah, I think it's absolutely critical that we create some sort of resource that does the same thing that our instruction sessions do, because there's so many people falling through the cracks, definitely. Yes, in the back.
Much of your presentation was about communication between librarians and students. Mm-hmm. I'm wondering about the involvement of faculty, studies that have been done about the presence of faculty in the use of all of these technologies, and how to improve or involve faculty. Faculty are often the ones that require students to use the library, and I think some of us have seen that oftentimes faculty aren't aware at all of what the resources are.
Oh gosh, yes. Yes, I think we almost need to do more marketing to faculty than we do to students, because they're the ones who are requiring, 3 print journals where you can't have anything, from a database or something like that. And I think, we really should be providing, the same sort of instruction to our faculty as we do to students, and to engaging them, in using these research tools. I mean, there's so many ways that we could be, we could be offering classes that teach them, what's so great about Zotero or Delicious. I mean, there's so many great research tools out there that are social that we could be, telling them about. And we often just don't even invite them in for, sessions or anything like that. I know at my library we're starting to offer sessions, and we're doing it more by department than, just anyone can come. So then they feel like it's, resources just for criminal justice faculty. Then they feel like it's special or something. But yeah, I think that's the biggest challenge we have, is really getting our faculty to know what is available, because they're the ones who are going to tell the students, the stuff in the library is great, or you can just, just use Wikipedia, whatever. But yeah, I definitely don't know the magic tool for getting them in, which I think is the biggest challenge. But having them contribute to a wiki would be a tremendous thing, and we have a lot of our military history faculty members who are adding to that military history wiki because they're excited to have a space where they can share knowledge. But I don't think every department is going to be like that. My friend created a wiki for business students, and as we know, business students don't share. It's a very, their classes are a competition. So we need to really look at our populations and not be completely offended when people in the MBA program don't jump at a wiki.
I'm afraid if we're going to keep on schedule, we'll have to end the questioning now. I'd like to remind everybody that we have refreshments in the corridor. We have a comments page on the website. The link is on the back of your program. And I'd like to thank Meredith very much for her very informative talk this morning.